Last night I heard the screaming, loud voices behind the wall. Another sleepless night for me. It won't do no good to call the police. Always coming late, if they come at all. Invisible. There are invisible people all around us. They cross in front of our cars as they go look for their daily jobs. They pour us tea in cafes. They open the gates when we go visit our friends. Some invisibles even help us raise our children. Being invisible isn't something one would wish for. It happens. It's the order of society. There are those people who we see and we pay attention to, maybe because they're in politics, they're celebrities, or they influence us. There are others we see, but we really don't. They don't exist. Now, okay, so you're like, all right. What do I know about being invisible? If you Google my name, you might find I have a digital footprint. I even trended on Twitter for a whole day because of my strong views on gender diversity. So what do I know about being invisible? Well, I do. It feels like it's frustrating. You know, when you're going to, Garden City Mall on Thika Highway. So you're going to Garden City Mall. You're about to get off the exit, but you miss it. Now you have to drive all the way down to what feels like Thika to make the turn to come all the way back. And when you're back on track, guess what? You miss it again. You keep missing that exit. You keep going down the wrong highway. And what's worse, the other cars don't care. They don't care if you've missed your exit, if you're going the wrong way. So it's frustrating and it's lonely. I felt invisible when I was 18. My parents, they did okay, but things got tough and we lost a lot of wealth. Come time for me to go to university, I had big dreams. I'm going to go to America. But they could only afford the first semester and a one-way plane ticket. So we made a deal, go to America. If you can make it work, great. If you can't, come home. I remember my mom saying, don't be desperate. You have a home, come back. I was desperate to go to America. So off I went with my one semester's tuition and enough to pay for a couple of months of food and accommodation. And I found out very quickly when you're in America and you don't have money, you're invisible. I got a job on campus. It was the best paying job for a student. They were always hiring. So you can guess people didn't want that job. I was a server. You know, in America, a server is basically like a waitress who helps in the kitchen. So you do a lot of things. And the reason why they were always hiring was it was a very embarrassing job. Can you imagine serving your fellow students and then a few hours later you're sitting next to them in school, in class? So, like, oh my God. Right? But hey, the money was good. My sister worked there, so she hooked me up. We would wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning when my friends were nursing hangovers. We were going to work. To get to work by 5:30, we would help the cook prep the food. We would sometimes cook some meals. We would set up the food. We would serve the food. We would clean up after. By the time we got home, we smelled like every meal we served that day. We reeked. and our feet hurt because of standing on them for hours. Okay, let me tell you about the uniform so you don't feel so depressed. But it was depressing, the uniform, oh my gosh. So it was this shapeless black jacket, like they didn't expect women to wear it. And these shapeless pants, black, which had a shiny, they were black pants, but they had this shiny, I don't even know why. They had this shiny thing, crisp white shirt, this cummerbund. Who knows what a cummerbund is? I didn't know what that was. Until I had to wear one. It covered like your belly. And it didn't fit right. And guess what else? A bow tie. We had to wear bow ties, even if we were women. We called it the penguin suit. Every time we wore it, I felt so depressed. If the money wasn't good, let me tell you. The worst shift was the MBA students. So these are people who, very much like yourselves, going places, management level, they're doing well. But these guys knew how to make us feel invisible. I remember this one day, I was serving the coffee and they were coming through, and I realized these guys are not looking at me. I mean, they looked in the general direction of your face, but they never made a connection. They never looked at you in the eyes. And I was like smiling and trying to, I know my uniform was hideous, but I was being pleasant. And I realized I kept looking, and no. Is the coffee hot enough? Is the coffee hot enough? That was basically the conversation that they would have with me. An occasional thank you, which really didn't mean thank you. It was just like, Hey, I'm going somewhere too. I have dreams, I have a name. I would scream, but on the inside, it was tough. Eventually, I saved enough money to cover my next semester's tuition and my upkeep. And I quickly started finding my way back to being visible. The job was just too hard for me. God blessed me. I got an internship at the world's largest public relations agency called Edelman, and like they say, the rest is history. But I'll never forget that feeling of you don't exist. Those MBA students made me feel like all I was a conduit for hot coffee. I'll never forget that. I realized that we all have a destiny, we all have a path. It's like that highway. Some of us get there sooner than others. Some of us miss our exit and have to get to Thika to get back on track. The next time I felt invisible was about 20 years later. By then, I paid my way right through undergraduate school. I worked my way right through MBA school, and I had come back home. And a group of us were invited back to the US as Eisenhower Fellows, and we were invited to the White House. Ooh. And yeah, it's not just a house that was white, it's the White House. Yeah, and not just any White House. It was the President Barack Obama White House. I mean, Kenya's own. It was basically my house. Come on. And I remember standing on the stairs to the Rose Garden, and I was standing next to Alma, and we were so excited. We were all so excited. It was a group of us, and you can imagine the excitement. It was the final weeks of just before the US election last year. So we're standing there waiting to meet Obama, but you're supposed to call him Mr. President. And he came from the back, so everybody does what? Now, Alma is about an inch taller than me, so we're not exactly tall. And basically everyone, we couldn't see him. Mr. President! he didn't hear, Mr. President! He couldn't see us. And it just felt like, you know that highway? Remember the exit? Yeah, I was like, no! And I remember feeling that desperation. And I looked across to Alma, and she was here too. Let me tell you who Alma is. Because when I was looking at her, I said, you know, it's not that bad. At least I'm with Alma. At least we're both invisible. Well, Alma is the wife to Mr. Colin Powell, or I should say retired General Colin Powell. And for those of us who don't know who Colin Powell is, he was supposed to be America's first black president, actually. And she was there to host us and introduce us to Obama. And here she was. We were both invisible. And I thought, okay, it's all right. I'm in good company. Well, then Alma did something quite spectacular. Mr. President! You know that tone moms use? My daughter is here. She knows that tone. She went there, and he heard her. He cut through the crowd and came down the steps, and he said hello to her, and she turned and introduced me to him. And he capped his hands, like his hands are huge, he covered my hands and looked me straight in the eye. And he said, hello. How are you doing? Thank you for coming. It was all of a few seconds, but it felt like a lifetime. It was pretty cool. Okay, so he said a lot of interesting stuff, but I just saw the mouth moving. I was in the moment. I can't remember what he said. And unfortunately, it wasn't taped, so. But what he reinforced to me that day is what I learned 20 years earlier, serving that coffee. You know what? We're all on a path. We're all going somewhere. We might not know it at the time, but we really need to have faith in ourselves. So maybe you're sitting here in the audience and you feel like I felt. You feel like you keep missing your exit. You're going the wrong way. Everybody else might seem to know where they're going, but you feel like, why haven't I gotten there? If this is your reality, let me encourage you. Don't let other people define your self-worth. Don't let other people make you invisible. It said you are a child of the universe. You have a right to be here. Remember Alma? She knew her self-worth. She was not going to be overlooked. So you, too, have a right. Now, maybe you're sitting there and saying, okay, Nuru, I don't get it. What are you talking about? Invisible? I've never felt that way. Well, maybe that means you're the one who makes other people feel invisible. Maybe you're the one who's so busy in your career, so busy in your family and your wonderful lives that you don't pay attention to how you make those invisibles feel. You don't connect. You look in the general direction of people's faces, but you never make an effort to engage with humanity. Now, I've been there too. Because now in my line of work, I'm always in restaurants, always in hotels, but I have to constantly remind myself, stop. Engage with other people. You know what it feels like to be invisible. And I don't want to be that person that doesn't. So if you're that person who is very caught up in your life, my advice to you is slow down. Slow down. Looking into somebody's eyes and smiling and saying, how are you? It takes a few seconds, but it can change somebody's life forever. Thank you.